I kept a document I called the Ash Codex. Every scene I cut, every chapter I removed, every passage I loved but could not justify went into the Ash Codex. By the time the reader of the Empress was finished, the Ash Codex contained over 10,000 words. The manuscript began at 96,000 words. The final version came in at 85,000. More than 10% of what I wrote did not survive. Some of it was good. Some of it was the best prose I had ever written. None of it belonged in the book. Today we talk about the hardest part of revision, not finding what is wrong. Finding what is wrong is relatively easy. The hard part is cutting what you love. Welcome back to the Architect's Method. I am Luigi Pascal Rondanini, and this is Episode 7, Killing Your Darlings. The phrase killing your darlings is usually attributed to William Faulkner, though the sentiment is older. It means this: sometimes the passages you love most are the passages that must go. Not because they are bad, because they do not serve the architecture. Beautiful writing that does not advance the story is not an asset. It is an obstruction. It is a room in your house that looks gorgeous but blocks the hallway. This episode is about how to identify those passages, how to find the courage to remove them, and how to make peace with the loss. Let me tell you about the first category of cuts I made in The Reader of the Empress: motif saturation. In my early drafts, the mirror motif appeared in nearly every chapter. Anna looking at her reflection, Anna seeing herself in windows, Anna confronting what she had become through reflective surfaces. The mirror is central to the novel's themes. Anna becomes a mirror for Catherine, reflecting what the Empress wants to see. The corruption of that mirror is the heart of Act 3. But when a motif appears everywhere, it loses power. The reader becomes numb to it. What should feel significant becomes wallpaper. I had to cut most of the mirror passages. I retained the motif in only 3 key structural moments: Chapter 11, when the mirror first breaks, Chapter 20, the corrupted mirror scene, and Chapter 24, the mirror vault. Everything else went into the Ash Codex, dozens of passages, some of my most carefully crafted sentences, gone. The result: when the mirror appears now, it means something. The reader feels it. The motif has weight because it is not diluted by repetition. Here is the diagnostic question I learned to ask. If I remove this passage, does anything break? Not does anything feel different. Of course it feels different. Less is always different from more. The question is, does anything break? Does a later scene become incomprehensible? Does a character motivation become unclear? Does a plot point lose its foundation? If the answer is no, the passage is decorative, and decorative passages, no matter how beautiful, are candidates for cutting. Most of my mirror passages failed this test. The 3 I kept were structurally essential. The others existed because I loved the imagery, not because the story required them. That is the trap. We write what we enjoy, and sometimes what we enjoy is not what the story requires. Let me give you another example. The Red Book journal entries. Anna keeps a private journal throughout the novel. She calls it the Red Book. These entries provide interior access, showing her private thoughts as distinct from her public performance. In my early drafts, there were 12 extended journal entries. Each one was carefully written. Each one revealed something about Anna's psychological state. 12 was too many. By the 8th entry, the reader knew what to expect. The entries were no longer revelations, they were repetitions. Anna processing, reflecting, questioning, in the same patterns she had already established. I cut the entries from 12 to 6. Each remaining entry had to be distinct in content and emotional register. No 2 could feel the same. 6 entries, each one doing unique work. That was enough. That was right. The 6 that remained are stronger because the 6 that were cut are gone. Here is a diagnostic I developed for identifying cuttable material. I call it the load-bearing test. Imagine your manuscript is a building. Every chapter, every scene, every passage is either load-bearing or decorative. Load-bearing elements hold the structure up. If you remove them, the building collapses. Plot points that later scenes depend on, character moments that establish motivation, reveals that the climax requires. Decorative elements make the building beautiful, but do not affect its structural integrity. Atmospheric passages. Clever dialogue that does not advance anything. Subplots that entertain but do not connect. Here is how to apply the test. For each chapter, ask, what load does this chapter carry? What later element depends on this chapter existing? If you cannot answer clearly, the chapter may be decorative. For each scene within a chapter, ask the same question. What load does this scene carry? For each passage within a scene, ask again. You will find that some chapters carry enormous load. They are dense with essential material. Every scene matters. Every passage connects. You will find that other chapters carry almost no load. They feel like the story is treading water. Nothing essential happens. Those low-load chapters are where you cut. Let me tell you about the biggest cuts I made, the terminal fragments. In my early drafts, the novel did not end at chapter 30. It continued and continued. What I call the terminal fragments stretched from chapter 29 through chapter 40 in one version. 12 additional chapters after the natural resolution point. These chapters contained some of my favorite writing. Anna in the provinces, building a community of learners. A character named Mikhail, teaching that the river remembers what the empire forgets. Ecological metaphors about channels and flow. A sequence I called The Gathering Ground, where pilgrims arrive at a place of learning Anna has created. Beautiful material, thematically rich, and structurally it was post-skeleton drift. The novel's architecture resolves when Anna chooses to leave court, when she walks into the mist in chapter 30. Everything after that point, no matter how lovely, was the story continuing past its natural ending. I had written endings beyond the ending, multiple variant conclusions, a mystical dissolution where Anna literally fades into the landscape, a community continuation showing her students carrying on her work, an ecological epilogue about rivers reclaiming imperial channels. All of it went into the Ash Codex. The canonical ending is now chapter 30, The Threshold, followed by a brief coda from Mira's perspective. Maybe 200 words. Anna walks into the mist. Mira witnesses. The story ends. What remains is leaner, more powerful, more architecturally sound. The ending suggests rather than demonstrates. The reader participates in imagining what comes next. Nearly 8,000 words of terminal fragments archived. The hardest cut I ever made. I want to talk specifically about the Dashkova warnings, because they illustrate a subtler form of cutting. Princess Dashkova is Anna's mentor and cautioner. In Act 1, she warns Anna about becoming a mirror for Catherine. In the final act, she offers guidance about escape. In my early drafts, Dashkova appeared 5 times, delivering variations of the same warning. Each scene was slightly different. Each warning had its own texture. But the reader does not need 5 warnings. The reader needs 1 warning that lands, and 1 return that completes the arc. I consolidated 5 scenes into 2. Chapter 3, the first warning, and a scene in the final act, where Dashkova helps Anna plan her departure. 3 Dashkova scenes went into the Ash Codex. The character became more powerful through reduction. Her appearances now feel significant rather than repetitive. Sometimes the darling you need to kill is not a passage. It is a pattern. The pattern of returning to the same well too often. The pattern of repeating what has already been established. Here is what I want you to understand about cutting. It is not failure, it is refinement. The material you cut is not wasted. It served a purpose. It helped you understand your story. It helped you find your characters' voices. It helped you discover what the book was really about. But once it has served that purpose, it may no longer belong in the manuscript. Think of it like sculpting. The marble you remove is not failure. It is how the sculpture emerges. The statue was always inside the block. You are just removing what is not the statue. Your novel is inside your draft. Cutting removes what is not the novel. Let me give you a practical framework for cutting. I call it the 3-pass method. Pass 1. Structural cuts. Read your manuscript looking only at structure. Ignore the prose quality. Ignore how much you love individual passages. Ask only, does this chapter, this scene, This beat served the architecture. Mark everything that does not clearly serve the architecture. Do not cut yet, just mark. Pass 2. Verification. For each marked element, ask the load-bearing question. If I remove this, does anything break? Test it. Actually remove the element temporarily. Read the surrounding material. Does it still work? Does anything become unclear? If it still works, the element is confirmed for cutting. If something breaks, the element stays, but you should examine whether it can be compressed. Pass 3. Execution. Cut everything confirmed in Pass 2. Move it to your Ash Codex. Do not delete it permanently. You may need to retrieve small pieces later. Then read the manuscript again. Notice how it flows now. Notice what you feel. In most cases, you will feel two things simultaneously: grief for what you lost, and relief that the story moves better. Both feelings are valid. Hold them both. Here is a diagnostic I ran on my manuscript after major cutting. Structural integrity, check post-cutting. Original word count, 96,000. Final word count, 85,944. Material removed, over 10,000 words across multiple categories. Motif repetition, primarily mirror imagery. Journal entries reduced from 12 to 6. Dashkova scenes consolidated from 5 to 2. Terminal fragments archived entirely. Various decorative passages throughout. Impact assessment. Pacing improved significantly in Act 2 and Act 4. Motif power increased through restraint. Ending resonance strengthened through suggestion rather than demonstration. No plot holes introduced. No character motivations obscured. Verification. The story is complete without the removed material. No reader will miss what they never saw. That last point is crucial. The reader does not know what was removed. They only experience what remains. The material I loved, that I thought was essential, exists now only in the Ash Codex, and the novel is better for its absence. Let me address the emotional difficulty directly. Cutting material you love feels like loss, because it is loss. You created something, and now you are uncreating it. Here is how I made peace with it. First, I kept the Ash Codex. Nothing was truly destroyed. The terminal fragments still exist. The variant endings still exist. I can read them whenever I want. They are just not in the book. Second, I reminded myself of the purpose. The purpose is not to preserve everything I wrote. The purpose is to create the best possible reading experience. Sometimes that requires subtraction. Third, I trusted the architecture. I had built a solid structure in the planning stages. When something did not fit the structure, the problem was the something, not the structure. Fourth, I remember that the reader comes first. I am not writing for myself. I am writing for someone who will experience this story once, without knowing what was removed. Their experience is what matters. These 4 practices help me cut without paralysis. Keep the material, remember the purpose, trust the architecture, serve the reader. Here is a warning about a trap many writers fall into. The trap of cutting and restoring. You cut a passage. You feel the loss. You read the manuscript and it feels thinner, so you restore the passage. Then you cut it again. Then you restore it again. The passage becomes a zombie, dying and returning, dying and returning. This is indecision disguised as revision. Here is my rule. If you cut something twice, it stays cut. The fact that you cut it twice means your structural instinct is correct. The fact that you restored it means your emotional attachment is strong. Trust the structural instinct. The emotional attachment will fade. The structural problem will not. Let me talk about one specific piece from the Ash Codex, a passage I still love, even though it does not belong in the book. In one of the terminal fragments, there is a character named Mikhail. He is an old farmer who lives near Anna's community in the provinces. He watches the spring thaw destroy the imperial channels that had controlled the local river. He says, "The river remembers. The empire tried to make it forget, but water has a longer memory than stone." I love that line. I love what it suggests about nature outlasting power. about memory persisting in unexpected forms. But the scene did not serve the architecture. It came after the novel's natural ending. It introduced a new character in the final pages. It shifted the focus from Anna to ecological metaphor. The line lives in the Ash Codex now. Maybe it will find its way into another project. Maybe it will remain there forever, a beautiful fragment that served its purpose by being cut. That is the nature of darlings. They are darlings because we love them. But love is not enough. They must also work. Here is what I want you to take from this episode. Cutting is not punishment. It is craft. Every word in your manuscript should earn its place, not through beauty alone, but through function. Beauty and function together make great prose. Beauty without function makes bloat. Your darlings are darlings because you wrote them. That is not enough reason for them to stay. They must also serve the story. They must carry load. They must advance the architecture. If they do not, they go into the Ash Codex. They remain yours, but they do not remain in the book. Create your own Ash Codex. Give yourself permission to cut without destroying. Keep everything you remove. Honor it by preserving it, even as you honor the story by removing it. And remember, the reader will never miss what they never saw. They will only experience what remains. Make what remains essential. Let me leave you with a passage that survived every cut. This is from chapter 30, The Threshold, when Anna prepares to leave the court forever. The question was no longer whether I could continue. I would continue, in a smaller way, in a quieter place, with whatever remained of myself after the empire had taken its portion. The question was whether the self that remained was enough, whether a life without influence could still be a life worth living, whether invisibility, chosen this time, could feel like freedom rather than defeat. I did not know the answer. I suspected I would spend years discovering it. But as the carriage carried me away from everything I had built and everything I had lost, I understood one thing clearly. I was no longer being carried. I was choosing the direction. And that, perhaps, was enough. That passage survived because it carries load. It completes the arc. It does structural work. And yes, I think it is beautiful. But it stayed because it works, not because it is beautiful. That is the lesson. Keep what works, cut what does not, and make peace with the difference. Before you go, if you're struggling to identify what to cut, the custom GPT can help. The Rondanini Architect's method can analyze your chapters for load-bearing versus decorative elements. It can identify passages that may be candidates for cutting. It can help you see your manuscript with structural eyes rather than emotional ones. Link in the show notes. The companion workbook has an exercise for creating your own Ash Codex and a checklist for the 3-pass cutting method. Use them. They make the process less painful. Next episode, Drift Zones. We are going to talk about the places in a manuscript where stories lose their way and how to recognize when your prose is drifting away from your vision. Until then, build well.